Coming up today, with the general election just over 3 weeks away, Korea's main opposition party is still settling on which candidates to put forward. All 4 members of the ruling party's Supreme Council will run. The chief nuclear envoys of South Korea and the US are due for talks in Seoul on the latest round of sanctions on North Korea for its nuclear and missile provocations. First, US President Barack Obama has arrived in Cuba for a historic trip. He'll meet with his Cuban counterpart Raul Castro during his 2-day stay. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world at 6 a.m. on Monday, March 21st here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Preparations for the April 13th general election is our starting point this morning, and Korea's political parties have around 48 hours now to finish their candidate nominations. The ruling Saenuri Party announced on Sunday that all 4 elected members of its Supreme Council, including Chairman Kim Woo-sung, won the nomination in the upcoming elections. 5-term lawmaker Kim, along with representatives Seo Chung-won, Lee In-jae and Kim Il-dong, will be running after defeating their rivals in the primaries. Now, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea failed to reach an agreement on selecting its candidates for proportional representation on Sunday. It's set to continue its discussions with its Central Committee on Monday. The nomination process should wrap up by Thursday, the start of a 2-day candidate registration period. North Korea has conducted military landing drills in what's being seen as a show of force against the ongoing Seoul-Washington combined exercise. Pyongyang is also beefing up its nuclear capabilities ahead of its Workers' Party Congress that will be held in May. Kwon Soo-ah with the details.
Under the direction of leader Kim Jong-un, the North Korean military has conducted landing and anti-landing exercises, most likely in a show of defiance against the ongoing military drills by South Korea and the US. According to the North state media on Sunday, the drills involved surface ships, fighter planes, and artillery subunits. Kim was quoted as saying that a surprise landing and attack would lead to a victorious battle, which he said mainly depends on, quote, how to neutralize the enemy's possible anti-landing movements while getting over its coastal defenses at one go. The Korean Central News Agency did not mention when the drills were conducted, but experts believe it was Friday when the Seoul-Washington training exercise called Key Resolve ended. North Korea is also continuing to expose key nuclear and missile technologies. Pundits say North Korea's scientists and technicians are revealing military secrets in the process of boasting off their capabilities ahead of its ruling Workers' Party conference in May. An official at Seoul's defense ministry said Sunday that North Korea seems to be ready to conduct a 5th nuclear test whenever Kim Jong-un wants to. With tensions rising on the Korean peninsula, South Korea's Marine Corps launched a new mobile unit composed of 3,000 troops that are ready to attack the North's key facilities in the event of an invasion. Meanwhile, Seoul has expressed its concern about North Korea's recent short-range and mid-range ballistic missile launches to related international bodies. According to a government source Sunday, Seoul sent a letter to the International Civil Aviation Organization and the International Maritime Organization, in which it calls North Korea's launches dangerous, as the regime gave no notice prior to the tests. The 2 organizations are expected to raise the issue with the regime soon. Kwon Soo-ah, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States will hold their first round of high-level talks on the sanctions on North Korea in Seoul on this Monday. According to an official at Seoul's foreign ministry, South Korea's top nuclear envoy, Kim Hong-kyun, will meet Washington's special representative for North Korea policy, Sung Kim, at the ministry. This comes just 2 weeks after their first meeting in the US capital. Seoul's chief envoy just returned from Beijing, where he held talks on the same issue with his Chinese counterpart. Monday's talks will also be attended by officials from the US Treasury and the US Department of Commerce, indicating the meetings will focus on the effective implementation of the sanctions on North Korea imposed by the UN Security Council and individually, unilaterally, by the US and South Korea. Now, there was a time when it seemed Korean shipbuilders would forever stay on top in any category related to the business and sector. However, the stark reality is that the industry has been experiencing a severe downturn, and the country's three biggest shipbuilders are struggling. Hyundai, Daewoo and Samsung Heavy Industries used to hold a combined 70% of the global market, but now Chinese rivals have taken 40% out of that pie, with Yangjiang Shipbuilding, the only Chinese shipbuilder that's not state-owned, spearheading the charge. Now, Japanese shipbuilders were struggling to maintain a 10% share 10 years ago, but they too are recovering at a quick rate. Japan's Imabari Shipbuilding has even managed to dethrone Samsung, which struggled last month with an order backlog of 5.08 million tons. Now, here's a reminder of just how serious the youth unemployment situation in Korea is right now. The vast majority of people without a job last month were recent college students. A new report by Statistics Korea shows out of 114,000 people who stayed jobless for more than 4 weeks in February, 80,000 or 70% were aged between 25 and 29. The jobless rate among those in their late 20s was almost 12% last month, adding 2.8 percentage points from a year earlier. The unemployment rate for people ages 15 to 29 hit a record high of 12.5% in February. Now, US President Barack Obama has just arrived in Cuba. It's the first visit to the island nation by a sitting US president in nearly 90 years. During his two-day stay, Obama is expected to meet with his counterpart Raul Castro, but also Cuban citizens from all walks of life. Shin Se-min reports.
It's the first visit by a sitting U.S. president in 88 years, signaling a shift in the country's diplomatic approach from isolation to engagement. President Obama will be meeting with his Cuban counterpart, Raul Castro, and they're expected to discuss the next steps for the two countries in dealing with a set of complex issues, including Cuba's political and economic reforms. The White House said President Obama will also raise the issues of political prisoners and human rights. While in Cuba, the U.S. president will be speaking before the Cuban people. He will also meet with dissidents and attend an exhibition baseball game pitting the Tampa Bay Rays against the Cuban national team. But the itinerary does not include a meeting with the 89-year-old communist revolutionary Fidel Castro. The historic visit comes 15 months after the U.S. and Cuba announced a normalization of ties between the two countries after more than 50 years. Ahead of the trip, Obama had announced the U.S. would ease travel restrictions for U.S. citizens and restore Cuba's access to the international financial system. Furthermore, the U.S. airlines are expected to launch direct flights to the island later this year with up to 110 flights per day. The U.S. president's trip to the island nation, located just 140 kilometers off the southern tip of Florida, has been welcomed by world leaders and is raising expectations about the implications the visit will have on future generations. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, terror suspect Salah Abdeslam could face trial in Paris, the very city where he planned to blow himself up. Reports say it looks likely he will be deported to France to face allegations of terrorist murder. Abdeslam is currently being interrogated by Belgian authorities. Prosecutors say he has already admitted that he wanted to commit a suicide bombing at Paris's main sporting stadium, but backed out. Abdeslam was detained following a raid on Friday in the Molenbeek neighborhood of Brussels. He was among 5 suspects detained as part of that operation. Turkey says the Islamic State militant group was responsible for the suicide bombing in Istanbul on Saturday that killed 5 people and wounded 36. The country's interior minister said the bomber, who died in the attack, was from south-central Turkey and a member of ISIS. Officials say 5 other people have been detained over Saturday's bombing. Israel has confirmed that 3 of its citizens died in the blast. 2 of them held dual citizenship with the United States. An Iranian national was also among the dead. In the wake of the attack, the Istanbul football derby match between Galatasaray and Fenerbahce has been postponed. Local authorities and the Turkish Football Federation say the match, due to be played on Sunday evening local time, would be moved to another date. The Google DeepMind challenge, where man battle machine in a game of Baduk or Go, highlighted the latest developments in artificial intelligence, AI, and sparked interest in its potential applications. For a look at how the field of medicine could benefit from such smart machines, our Park Se-young reports.
The medical field is undergoing revolutionary changes with the help of the latest technological advances. For example, major hospitals are switching to electronic health record-keeping systems.
MD Anderson realized early on that to really get the full patient experience, it had to be electronic. We had to move from a paper-based system to an electronic system.
Growing demand for products like these has fueled innovation at tech companies like IBM and Google. The 2 tech giants are exploring the limits of artificial intelligence and bringing their inventions into the medical field. IBM has a long history with AI. Its chess-playing computer Deep Blue defeated a world champion in 1997, and its supercomputer Watson became the winner of a quiz show in 2011. Its Watson Health system synthesizes data from medical records, scans, and other sources to help doctors identify ailments so they can treat patients more efficiently. Google, with its huge database of information, is quickly following suit. Its Baduk playing computer program AlphaGo recently threw the spotlight back on the prospects for artificial intelligence. Building on this research, Google launched DeepMind Health last month to create apps for medical professionals. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, it's World Poetry Day today, set by UNESCO as a way to recognise poets working around the world. A secondary goal is to support linguistic diversity, and here in Korea, the poet everyone is talking about these days is Yoon Dong-ju, known for his moving compositions during Korea's years under Japanese colonial rule. Oh Se-young reports.
Plum blossoms are in full bloom in Korea, heralding the arrival of spring. As they bud in winter, withstanding the freezing conditions, the flowers have come to represent virtuous scholars throughout history who endured great hardship during their lives. One such celebrated figure is Yoon Dong-ju, a poet known for his lyrical compositions and resistance against Japan's brutal occupation. To commemorate Yoon's legacy, a public concert was held over the weekend in a village flush with plum blossoms. His best-loved works were recited by singer Yoon Young-ju, who is also the poet's second cousin. The singer also paid tribute to his cousin with a song inspired by the poem Prologue.
His integrity in life was admirable, even to his family members, and his love for our country and people shines in his poems, expressed through internal resistance, not conflict.
Yoon grew up during the height of the colonial era, when Koreans were oppressed by Japan's military authorities. From the age of 17, Yoon expressed his torment over this suppression and his hope for a liberated Korea, under the theme of The Sky, the Wind and the Stars, the title of his anthology. But his poems couldn't be published as Japanese authorities banned Koreans from using their own language. But Yoon refused to be silenced. He entrusted this manuscript to his younger friend Jeon Byung-woo, who preserved the text underneath these floorboards in a house in Gwangyang City, Jeollanam-do province. Yoon would never see his poems published nor his country freed. He died at the age of 28 in a Japanese prison where he was sentenced for his role in the Korean independence movement. His anthology was published in 1948, 3 years after his death and Korea's liberation. Since then, his works have become a timeless source of inspiration for modern Koreans, especially in recent weeks among young people.
There's so many beautiful poems that I love. You can see how he kept our literature alive in a suppressed society. It's impressive how he wasn't swayed by his surroundings, but confidently voiced his emotions.
It's moving and sad. It makes me proud as a Korean and grateful to live in this generation.
A movie on his life titled Tongju hit local cinemas last month, sweeping box offices with ticket sales of more than 1 million. Also, sales of his anthology spiked in February, making the bestseller list in most large bookstores. 71 years after his death, Yoon Dong-ju's delicate yet earnest words continue to speak to Koreans today. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, the weather has really warmed up in the last few days, and one clear sign that spring is in full bloom in Korea is that some of the country's biggest flower festivals are open, and they did so over the weekend. The Gwangyang Mehwa Festival in Jeollanam-do province offers glimpses of pink and white plum blossoms dotting the hills overlooking the Somjingang River. And at the Gure Sansuyu Festival, visitors can admire beautiful clusters of cornelian cherry flowers on the foothills of Chilisan Mountain. On top of the fresh air and picturesque moments, there are plenty of local specialities and outdoor activities to sample and take part in. Both festivals will go on for an entire week. Well, that's all we have for now on this Monday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching. We do hope your week is off to a great start, and we'll be back throughout the day with many more newscasts. Until then, goodbye.